Hello, and welcome back to our continuous self-assessment podcast. Today, we are going to talk about the Money and Funding and Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Standard. My name's Yvonne. I'm the Quality and Learning Officer at Homestart UK. And today I have with me is Steve Griffiths. He's the Quality Improvement Specialist. And we've got Natalie Golaj, who is the Assistant Director of Finance and Governance at Homestart UK. Natalie, you're part of the wider senior leadership team here at Homestart UK. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Yvonne. I'm very pleased to join today and to talk about money and the EDI. It's nice to have a sort of conversation with the network as part of the wider leadership team, leading mainly on finance and governance. I am mostly internal based, so it's lovely to speak here today.
And Steve, do you want to say hello to the network? They should be used to your voice by now.
Thank you, Yvonne. Hello, everyone. Steve Griffiths, part of the quality team. And I think we are ready to start looking through the standard areas and the indicators now. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what the next round of the self-assessment is before we go on to look at the individual indicators with Natalie. So the first standard area we'll be looking at is equality, diversity and inclusion. And there's just one indicator in this standard, and we're just asking you to upload one piece of evidence, which is your equality, equity, diversity and inclusion action plan. And the second standard area we're going to be looking at today is money and funding. And there are 6 indicators in this standard. And we're only asking you to upload one piece of evidence, which is your most recently completed finance checklist. The deadline for your submission is the 31st of July this year. So we're going to start looking at the equality, diversity and inclusion standard. And I'm going to ask Natalie, as part of HS UK's wider senior leadership team, how HS UK monitors and uses its action plan to know whether it is effective or not. How do you do that, Natalie?
Our action plan is monitored by the Trustees Board, as well as the senior leadership team and a newly formed People Committee. We review the plan in regular meetings, and we ensure that it still aligns with our policies and our projects which are going forward. It is about regularly trying to monitor our plans and assess if we are still moving forward on the asks that we've put upon ourselves.
Thank you. So just a note on this standard is your plan only needs to be proportionate to the size of your organisation. And if you don't have a plan in place yet, you can go to our homepage where there are examples of completed plans from different sizes of home starts using the HS UK template. You're very welcome to use that template, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel with this. So if you haven't got a plan yet, have a look at that page on at home. So we're now moving on to looking at the money and funding standard area. And there are 6 indicators here. And we're going to go through these one by one with Natalie. So let's start off with indicator 001, Natalie. What are the key things to be aware of with this indicator?
This indicator is that all home starts must meet the appropriate legal and ethical responsibilities set out in the national regulation standards from the fundraising regulator. Now, these are not the same as GDPR, though they are similar. It is important that you meet all of these types, even if you are not doing mass funding from individual donors. Things like events and other areas that you may have expanded into are items for consideration, such as challenge events via companies as well.
Thank you. If we can look at the next indicator, which is 002.
002 is only for those of you who are lucky enough to receive over £1 million in your income level. You must ensure that you report to the fundraising regulator the approach that you take, and this should form part of your annual report in your statutory accounts as well.
Thank you. So if you don't meet that income level, you can just put not applicable in your self-assessment submission. So Natalie's already mentioned a bit about the next indicator, which is 003. And if you can just say just a bit more about what third-party fundraisers are, Natalie, in case that applies.
Third-party fundraisers are when you employ a separate company to help you with the fundraiser. This may be a challenge event, it may be a fundraising ball. These individuals must be included in your annual report. There must be a statement of how you interact with your third-party fundraisers and the legal and contributions that you are paying towards their organisations.
Thank you. So this standard doesn't have indicators 004 and 005. So our next indicator is 006, and this is a should, so it's best practice. If you could just say a little bit, Natalie, about 006 for us.
We do advise that you have an ethical fundraising policy. It will really help your trustees and your management to make decisions on when you say no to funding. There is times when it doesn't fall into our ethics to actually say yes to every pound that we are offered.
Thank you. And the next indicator, 007, is follows on from 006, and it's actually about how you use your ethical fundraising policy in practice to make decisions. Natalie, could you say a bit about how HS UK does that?
HUK has used their ethical fundraising policy in the past and has had to say no to funders. There are opportunities that come by which can be not in line with the overall standards of ethics that Homestart UK portray in its brand. Our trustees feel that it is important to assess that any funder and any name which wants to be associated with the Homestart movement should be in line with our ethics too. The trustee board have reviewed some corporates and also trust sponsors who have not been in line with these ethical standards.
Thank you, Natalie. So if you don't have an ethical fundraising policy in place at the moment, please go to our page on At Home, where you can see an example of that, and please feel free to use it. If you don't have to have a standalone policy, it may be a section in perhaps an overarching fundraising policy that you have, and you have a section in there on ethical fundraising. That's equally fine when you come to your self-assessment. In your self-assessment on 007, this is the more important one because it's about how you use that in practice. So please make sure you're clear about that in your narrative. And then we come on to our final indicator, which we're going to spend a bit more time on because it relates to the finance checklist. And that is indicator HSQA6. Perhaps, Natalie, the best thing would be if we could just go straight to the finance checklist. And if you could pick out some key items that you would like to draw people's attention to.
Thanks, Steve. So, financials and charity financials, the heart of my passion and why I work here. I want to firstly start with the financial checklist has been written to try and cover the breadth of size in our local home starts. Some may seem not quite in line with your home start personally, but please understand that we have tried to write this to allow from the smallest to the largest for our home starts to really look at its finances in a formulated way. And for us here at Home Start UK to help you where necessary with any indicators that you may not be meeting or only partially meeting and help you move forward to meet the full standard. So getting into the checklist then, hopefully some of the checklist is quite self-explanatory. Name of trustee, treasurer, finance lead, all of those things should be quite easy to come to find. Now, I'm aware that finance leads doesn't mean finance trained, and some of you managers are also doing the heavy work of the finances too, and we appreciate your time on that. So moving on to income risk and understanding where your income sources are coming from, it's important that you look at what is the future income stream. And part of meeting this part of the assessment is, have you got plans? Do you have pipeline? The next question about understanding the risk of having less than 6 months unrestricted reserves. I'd like to break this one up a little bit more. Unrestricted reserves are those free reserves which can be used for any activity within the charity. They are not logged directly to a project and are not linked to an ask from a funder. 6 months of these reserves is quite large for some organisations, and it doesn't mean that you always have to hold 6 months. It means you have to assess the risk of holding less than 6 months. Some places it is appropriate to hold less than 6 months, and it's important that trustees within each home start assess what is the value of their free unrestricted reserves that they should hold. 6 months is a targeted figure that we have put out in this assessment to give you as a guide. It's not a rule that you must always follow. The assessment is asking you to consider the level of risk for your reserves and why you're choosing to hold less. Financial reporting is a very important part of managing your finances. And it's important that your financial reports aren't just figures, but also have clear narrative and forecast information which your trustees can understand. We would love to know that you are meeting this part of the element too. Cash flow reports should go to the trustee board. Home starts should be monitoring their cash on a regular basis, and trustees should be seeing these at least quarterly. Cash is effectively the financial backbone of how we run our organisations and should be considered separate to those of you who are doing accruals accounting for the management accounts. When we talk about the culture which exists where the senior staff and trustees feel able to ask questions, we are looking for you to be able to show us at the points in trustee meetings where you have had trustees ask questions and these have gone answered. All of the local home starts at every level should have an appropriate financial control policy. The policy should be set out at the level of your local home start. Steve, is there policies that they can access if they should need some drafts?
Yes, Natalie, there is a Home Start UK financial controls policy on at home, and you can find the link at the bottom of the policy table. It's important to note, though, that as this is for HS UK, it is very detailed because we're a larger organisation. And for smaller home starts, you just may want to look at that and take some of the key things out that are relevant and proportionate to the size of your particular home start.
All trustees should have a basic understanding of charity accounting. Not all trustees come from a financial background, and that's not what we're asking for in this standard. There are many options of training available, and having this part of the induction is an important part of onboarding your trustees. Trustees will understand the health of the organisation if they have this accounting understanding. And though sometimes the health may not be always great, we would love for that to be a standard we could all meet. But understanding of the health is very important for trustees, and this should be something that is often discussed in meetings. Finances should go beyond just the treasurer and the financial team. It should be discussed at the higher level of the board meeting, and all trustees should be involved in detailed financial related discussions, ensuring that every trustee understands the full breadth of the reports. Risk falls as part of finance. Risk management processes in place are highly important and often linked to our financial status. Risk should be managed alongside your finance activity and should be reviewed on a quarterly basis. The risks that are at your local home start will be determined by the size of your home start and the areas in which you work in. Owning a risk register is an important factor that we ask you to do. Fundraising strategies. Fundraising strategies go beyond the small fundraising. Strategies involve the type of funding. Are we going to trusts? Are we going to statutory? How much of our income is made up of individual donations? How do we support donors? What is the crucial information that is coming back from us? All of these questions should be answered in your fundraising strategy. And it is appropriate to consider how much of your funding is marked as restricted. Restricted funds mean that the funder has logged with the charity that the funds must be only used for a certain type of activity. These can become complex for the charity, and in your fundraising strategies, you should consider how you navigate this problem and how you persuade funders to work with you on a more fluid approach and aiming for the unrestricted funds that are much needed. Thinking long term, we ask you to embed your 3-year financial strategic plans. This is looking at what income streams come to end. What have you got in your pipeline? When are you going to look for new types of funding? The future is always unknown, but with finances, the more we plan ahead, the better we can cover on what is going to happen in next year. And when will we need to make changes, adjustments? It's important for the trustees to understand how the reserves might be needed if future funding plans don't go ahead. Organisational budgets should be approved by the board annually. These should be alongside your 3-year financial strategic plans. But we're not asking you to approve a 3-year budget. We are asking you to ensure that you approve a 1-year budget and that this 1 year projects your income and your expenditure plans. This part of the assessment are the critical criteria that we're asking to meet, but alongside these, there are some additional considerations. The additional considerations that we ask for: do your financial reports show what is restricted and unrestricted? Does your trustees know how many of the free reserves are unrestricted and are truly free? And how much of the project costs are actually going to be used against your restricted funding? Are payments out authorised efficiently? Is this clear under your financial control policies? Do you have 2 bank authorisations for your payments that are going out? Are expenses authorised by the right people? Are your payments and your onboarding of staff in the right process for authorisation? Are bank reconciliations checked by a different person to who is preparing the reports? Now, we know that this is not always possible with such small teams, but it's important that we document and review where weaknesses may fall in our financial controls. We are all in charge of good governance to ensure that the finances are safe and secure and monitored the best we can. So, trustees should have access to the bank and check bank statements where possible. Limits of authorisations should form part of your financial controls. You should assess where authorisation limits are appropriate, at what point they go to the trustee board. We're looking for controls, but not at the risk of inefficiencies. It's important that your controls are related to the size of your home staff. Where appropriate, internal audits of procedures should be done. This is likely to be on the largest home starts, but it also might be on the smallest home starts where there is only one individual who is in charge of most of the process. An extra audit will help the governance and make sure the trustees feel really strong about their financial controls. Alongside our finances, there is lots of grant monitoring. And completing reports on time and having appropriate information for your funders does form part of your financial information. And it'd be great to understand how these are being monitored at the local home starts too.
Thank you, Natalie, for that comprehensive review of the checklist. We hope you find that useful and helpful. And just to reiterate that it should be proportionate to the size of your home start.
Well, thank you both so much. You can find all the support that you need around filling in the money and funding and equality, diversity and inclusion self-assessment on At Home. You can find the Continuous Self-Assessment podcast on YouTube, and the link to the playlist will be at the top of the page on At Home. And if you do have any questions that you can't find the answers to, please do get in touch with the quality team via email at quality@home-start.org.uk. And just a reminder, you have got until the 31st of July to submit your self-assessment for this standard via the HSQA web form.
This brings us to the end of this podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and good luck with the submission.